Hello everyone, it's Scott, and we're back for our top 10 Mythic Rares from Duskmourn, House of Horrors. And I'll be doing some other top 10 lists throughout the course of this week, so check back to get those lists as well. And always remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Duskmourn and spoiler seasons to come. Alright, so let's look at our top 10 Mythic Rares. So first I've got a couple of honorable mentions. The first is Kaido, Bane of Nightmares for 2, a blue and a black mana. You get Legendary Planeswalker Kaido with Ninjutsu for 1 and a blue and a black mana. And what Ninjutsu does, you have an attacking creature that isn't blocked, and you can pay 3, and Kaido would replace that creature on the field. And during your turn, as long as Kaido has 1 or more loyalty counters on him, he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. So I think that surprise ability with Kaido, and then once you get him on the field, then you can create emblems for his +1 ability that give all of your ninjas +1/+1, and there are a few ninjas in standard right now. And for 0 you can surveil 2 and then draw a card for each opponent who lost life this turn, or for -2 you can tap target creature and put 2 stun counters on it. So that, and I think that stun ability is actually probably an important one in standard, because it takes out the most important creature your opponent has from combat and allows you to do some things and probably get that damage through that you need to go ahead and activate Kaido's other abilities. So Kaido, honorable mention. Next I've got as another honorable mention Enduring Tenacity for 2 and 2 black mana. You get an enchantment creature that's a Snake Glimmer. It's a 4/3, and whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. When Enduring Tenacity dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. So Enduring Tenacity, I think like a lot of the Enduring series, I think they're playable cards in standard. And this one I think is the most playable because we already have life gain decks in standard. And the fact that this can just cause your opponent to lose life for you gaining life is a really powerful ability, whether you're using the Domain deck, whether you're using the Orzhov deck. I think it's going to fit into one of those, or both potentially, because that ability to just chip at your opponent's life by you gaining life is a very, very powerful ability. And let's go ahead and look at the top 10, but before I get into that, I do want to say this about the Mythic Rares of this set. I really feel like they did a good job with the Mythic Rares in this set, and I think the bulk of them will probably see at least some standard play for the most part, because they all are utility in some way. And the way I look at it with the Mythic Rare is if you can play a couple copies of it in your deck, then it's a useful card, then that makes it a pretty good Mythic Rare. Alright, so our first is going to be at number 10, Funeral Room and Awakening Hall. First of a couple of rooms from the set that I want to talk about. So Funeral Room costs 2 and a black mana, and you get an enchantment. That's a room, and when a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Okay, this works well with Enduring Tenacity, obviously, because anytime you gain life, opponent's gonna lose life. So this is really, if you had Enduring Tenacity on the field, this is each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 1 life. And then on the other side, we have Awakening Hall for 6 and 2 black mana. You get a room, and when you unlock this door, return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I think this fits into a couple styles of deck. One, any kind of sacrifice deck where you're going to be sacrificing creatures, it fits into very well because you get the drain and gain every time you do that. But more importantly, the Awakening Hall half of this card in the late game, when you can unlock this, and then every creature your opponent's killed over the course of the game, or every creature you've milled over the course of the game, now comes to the battlefield. I think that is just such a powerful ability, and for those reasons, I think it's going to see play in standard. Alright, coming in at number 9, I have Overlord of the Flood Pits for 3 and 2 blue mana. You get an enchantment creature that's an avatar horror. It's a 5/3 with impending 4. And for 1 and 2 blue mana, if you cast the spell for its impending cost, it enters with 4 time counters and isn't a creature until the last is removed. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from it. It also has flying, and whenever Overlord of the Flood Pits enters or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So the card draw on this is really why I'm excited about this. For the 3 mana impending cost, you get to draw 2 and discard 1, and then you get to let it sit there. And yes, it's going to take some time to actually become a creature, but once it does, then it's a draw 2, discard 1, every single combat that it can attack. And I think that makes it a very powerful card for Standard as we look at where blue decks are right now. Next, I've got our second room of our top 10, and that's Walk-In Closet and Forgotten Cellar. And really the Walk-In Closet side is what makes this card a top card in the Mythic Rares. Because Walk-In Closet costs 2 and a green mana for your enchantment room, and you may play lands from your graveyard. So this, in my mind, goes into any of our mill style decks where you're milling stuff. And now, if you play Walk-In Closet, now every turn you can play a land from your graveyard that you've milled. So you're, in essence, getting additional card draw with this, and those cards you're going to draw are going to be lands that you can build up your board state with over the course of the game, and I think that's going to be a powerful ability and way to ramp in Standard. Now, we also have Forgotten Cellar for 3 and 2 green mana, and when you unlock this door, you may cast spells from your graveyard this turn, and if a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile it instead. So in the late game, when you've built up your mana because of Walk-In Closet, then you play this, and then you're able to play all the spells you have out of your graveyard at that point, and probably win the game within a turn or two because of that. So I think the combination is really powerful. Now, Forgotten Cellar, I don't think this is going to be played much unless you've got a lot of mana on the field. And if you do, if you got a lot of land, then this becomes a very good card to activate. And we do have, again, other ways to gain some mana. And because of that, I think this is going to see Standard play. Next, I've got at number 7, Vargoth, Terror Eater for 6 and 3 black mana. You get a legendary creature. That's an Elder Demon. It's a 9/9 with flying and lifelink. With Ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. If a card you don't control will be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And during your turn, you may play cards exiled with Vargoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So Vargoth, incredibly powerful card. You know, in some ways it could be the number 1 mythic in the set, but my hesitation with that is it's 9 mana. So the only way I see this having a real presence in Standard is you're going to play it in some kind of mill style deck where you're going to be able to get into the graveyard, whether that's through discarding cards or whether it's through mill, and then you can reanimate it. And if that is the case, then I think Vargoth is going to dominate Standard for the next 3 years if we are able to find the deck that works in. But outside of that, I don't think this sees play simply because it's such a difficult card to get into play because it's 9 mana. And right now, Standard is fast enough that you might not make it to turn 9 if you have to hard cast this. Coming in at number 3 is our third room in our top 10 Mythic Rares, and that's Dollmaker Shop and Porcelain Gallery. So Dollmaker Shop costs 1 and a white mana. You get an enchantment, that's a room, and whenever one or more non-toy creatures you control attacks a player, create a 1/1 white toy artifact creature token to add creatures to the board every time you attack with a creature. And I wouldn't be surprised you're playing some kind of 1-drop on turn 1, and then on turn 2 you're playing Dollmaker Shop, you're attacking, and you're starting to create those additional creatures that you're going to want later in the game. And then you've got also Porcelain Gallery for 4 and 2 white mana. Creatures you control have base power and toughness, each equal to the number of creatures you control. And I really like Porcelain Gallery for the late in the game effect. Once you get to 6 mana, hopefully you've got 5 or 6 or more creatures on the field, and that most likely will allow you to have one big swing and take out your opponent on that turn. Coming in at number 5, we have the return of Mythic Massacre with Mythic Massacre 2 for XX and 4 black mana. You get a legendary enchantment, and whenever Mythic Massacre enters, each player sacrifices X creatures. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return that card to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So pay 3 mana to recast it, in essence. And when a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. So Mythic Massacre, I don't know if you're going to play this for its sacrifice ability, but I think for 4 mana, this effect in Standard and in other formats is going to be powerful. This is definitely going to see Commander play, because when one of your things dies, you can pay 3 life to get it back, or when one of your opponent's creatures dies, they have to pay 3 life, or you get their creature. And I think that's going to make Mythic a very popular card in Standard. Next, coming in at number 4, we have Overlord of the Bal Mar for 3 and 2 black mana. You get an enchantment creature that's an avatar horror and is a 5/5 with impending 5. And for 1 and a black mana, you can pay its impending cost. And whenever Overlord of the Bal Mar enters or attacks, mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. So I think this is a very, very powerful card in Standard, because you're going to get it most likely on turn 2, and you're probably going to play this in some kind of mill style deck where you're going to mill things, and then you're going to go ahead and get a creature from the cards that you mill, put it in your hand. So it's kind of a mill 4, draw 1 cards that are in your graveyard. And now because of that, I think having this is going to be a very nice card early in the game. You play it, you get something you can play while you're waiting for Overlord of the Bal Mar to become a creature. And even if you don't make it a creature earlier than that, because we do have things that remove counters in Standard, I think this is just going to do really well. And I think it's probably a 2 of index to get those abilities. Coming in at number 3, we have Huntwood Shiver for 1 and 2 green mana. You get a Beast Mutant. That's a 3/3, and whenever Huntwood Shiver attacks, manifests Dread. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put 1 onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. And you can play a green and a colorless mana and reveal target face down permanent. If it's a creature card, you may turn it face up. So what I really like about Huntwood Shiver is every single turn you're going to be, in essence, ramping creatures when it attacks. So if your opponent can't kill Huntwood Shiver, every single turn what you're going to be seeing is it's going to grow your battlefield every single turn, and it doesn't cost you anything to do that. And then later, when you do have face down cards that are creatures and you want to turn them up, you only have to pay 2 mana to do that. And I think that's where this is going to shine the most, because you're going to be getting, I assume in this kind of style deck, a lot of 4, 5, 6 mana creatures that you really want to get onto the battlefield, but you are going to, in essence, try to do that through the Manifest Dread ability. And then for that 2 mana later in the game, you're going to go ahead and reveal those cards, and then you're going to get all those advantages. So I think this is going to be a very, very powerful card in Standard. Next, we have Screaming Nemesis for 2 and a red mana. You're going to get a creature that's a spirit. It's a 3/3 with haste, and whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. And that's such a powerful ability. We know right now in Standard that there are multiple life gain decks out there that are just trying to gain life early in the game to stabilize. Well, Screaming Nemesis kind of defeats that purpose, because you're going to be able to attack with this, deal damage to an opponent, and again, it's whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage. Okay, so if they block Screaming Nemesis, you're going to do damage to your opponent. Or if you hit your Screaming Nemesis with something like a shock, you're going to turn off your opponent's ability to gain life for the rest of the game. And that is not only a powerful ability in Standard, but I think in other 60 card formats as well. Alright, coming in at number 1, I have Overlord of the Huntwoods for 3 and 2 green mana. You get an enchantment creature that's an avatar horror. It's a 6/5 with impending 4 for 1 and 2 green mana. Whenever Overlord of the Huntwoods enters or attacks, create a tap colorless land token named Everywhere that is every basic land type. So Overlord of the Huntwoods is your ramp engine in green in Standard. And because of that, I think you are going to see decks that are going to play 3 and 4 copies of this simply to ramp. Because every time you play it, you're going to ramp. And we do already have ways, to get counters off of things in Standard. So I think this is probably going to go into some kind of Golgari shell, probably with Overlord of the Bal Mar as well in that deck. And we know that Glissa Sunslayer removes counters from things, so that could remove your counters from your Overlord of the Huntwoods when it does damage to your opponent. And because of that, I think this is going to see a tremendous amount of Standard play over the next 3 years. So I'll be back later on this week with my top rares and my top uncommons from the set as they apply to Standard. So thanks for watching to the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Duskmourn House of Horrors spoiler season and beyond. Thanks. I'll see you next time.